And this is the Historical Book Club.
The Historical Book Club. Even though we're going to change the name soon again. Okay. Sorry. I was like... We're going to change the name again soon.
What is the cause for the change of the name?
Well, because it's not really so much of a historical book club anymore, because I feel like, well, it's history and global politics, and I feel like we're spending a lot of time talking about global politics.
Yeah, we do, don't we?
We do, and I got a lot to talk about tonight about global politics.
All right.
Yeah. So, but anyway, you guys will be with us no matter what.
Yes.
And we can change the name, but it'll still be us.
It'll still be us. So, what do we have on the agenda for tonight?
Well, let me see. Oh my God. Well, the world's going crazy.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Well, okay. So one of the things I do is watch a lot of watch Al Jazeera and take notes about things that I think are interesting and things to talk about on the Historical Book Club. So one of the things we've talked about is Zimbabwe and land reclamation. Okay. Yes. Well, I watched a show today on Al Jazeera where they were talking about doing the same thing in South Africa.
Oh boy.
Give land back to, as far as we're concerned here at Historical Book Club, the rightful owners.
Yeah.
Okay, like take white people's land and give it to black people, okay, who had been there. And, again, if my grandparents took something, I want it to go back to the rightful owner. So that was tried in Zimbabwe, and I guess the problem with Zimbabwe is that they were really disorganized about it and didn't prepare the new owners. They didn't have the proper equipment for farming and all of that. So on Al Jazeera, they get a couple experts to come in, and so today there was a white guy arguing for giving land back and a black guy arguing against it. So that was kind of interesting. And the black guy claimed that some of the farmers were being brought back in Zimbabwe because people were having too hard a time farming the land.
Yes.
Yeah. And the pro-return guy was just saying no, that's not the case. And they kept trying. What they were saying is it's in the Constitution. And what South Africa is trying to do is do things in an orderly, law-abiding way.
Yeah.
And the question is, does the South African Constitution say that you can take things back and return them to the people they were stolen from? And that was
Yeah, I wonder how they're going to pull that off, though. Like, how do they do that? Does that mean every person of that nationality or of that ethnicity gets something? Or does it, up to a certain year, or how are they going to work that? I
think you should just go back and see, okay, has this land been in your family since 1904, around the time of invasions? Because South Africa was controlled by Dutch people, and then they had the Boer War, and it was taken over by Great Britain. Right. So that's why a lot of people speak Afrikaans. Now I might be wrong about this. I hope I'm not wrong. Is similar to Dutch. That's a language that people speak in South Africa. So I think you just go back over the records and see how people got their land. Did they just come take it? Did they buy it?
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what they're trying to do in South Africa. Meanwhile, in Zimbabwe, we've been talking about how Zimbabwe has legalized medical cannabis. And
Zimbabwe is going to try to make some money. I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to jump on it now.
Well, they are, and I'm really interested in this because You know, I mean, I have a lot of friends in the cannabis movement, and what I want to do is, I see Maurice is watching, is get some people together in Vallejo as part of the medical cannabis community and reach out to people in Zimbabwe and just say to people at the dispensary, saying like, hey, we see you, okay? We're really glad, and we want your money to stay with you, okay? We want the money. We want the Zimbabweans to have the money. Now it's balled up in regulations and stuff, which happens. But I mean, as we know, the new president of Zimbabwe, Emerson Mnangagwa, otherwise known as the Crocodile, is trying to open up Zimbabwe for foreign investors and have sanctions removed and rejoin the Commonwealth.
Right.
Okay, and that's kind of interesting, because I guess now the reason people are in the Commonwealth is financial.
Right,
basically. It's for trading. Because I never really understood that's like, God, man, why do you want to like hang around with these colonizers, basically? Right.
But it's most likely for money. You know how that goes.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, it is. And so I've been talking about that to members of the cannabis community here in Vallejo, because it's not only Zimbabwe. I mean, the issue of medical cannabis being a new industry, or new-ish, and wanting it to be just and equitable and fair, and more people to get a chance to get in and make money. So it's kind of, I mean, it's worse, it's exaggerated in Zimbabwe, but it's similar issues. So I sincerely hope that we in the medical cannabis community can do that.
Oh yeah.
Yes. So that's what's going on there. And then one of the things that we've been talking about is this anti-immigration fever all over the world. Yeah. And we've been talking about that in Hungary. A real conservative guy, our press would love him, named Viktor Orban, was elected in Hungary, and he's criminalizing agencies that help migrants. And there's also been an anti-immigrant candidate elected in Slovenia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's this massive movement of trying to keep other people out.
So what do you think is going on with that? I mean, what do you think the situation with that? It seems like ever since the United States has been, pushing it hard, it's like everybody's trying to push it hard.
It's actually been pushed much harder in Europe all along because they're right there. Because it's particularly a lot of migrants from Eritrea, and we're going to talk about in Eritrea, people from that coast make the journey over and land in Italy. And again, I'm not going to, there's elements of nationalism, of xenophobia and racism, and that can be part of anti-immigrant fervor, and that's not good. But I'm also not going to discount economic concerns of people in Italy.
Right.
People feel like, I don't know. I mean, people say some really ugly, terrible things, and that's wrong. But people feel like their social systems or something is under strain. I mean, and in Europe, I mean, I don't think there's an excuse to be possessive or anything in the first place, but in Europe, you at least have people who can say, well, I've been here, my family has been here since 2,000 years, right. This is my land. Whereas in the U.S., you pretty much have a whole lot of people whose, grandparents or great-grandparents came to the United States who are now like, mine, and I mean, with the legal issues, I'm like, it's not my country.
Right. I don't know, man. I think a lot of this stuff is happening. This is more of a karma thing why all this is going on now. I think a lot of these people, like with all the different immigrants that want to come into these countries.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening is, since they've all been letting these immigrants in, and then a lot of people are starting to learn history of all their situations. Yeah. And I think it's starting to get to some of those people who don't want them back, don't want them in here, because they know now, like a lot of these people know, like, you know, this used to be my land, or at one point my ancestors was here, and it's kind of, man, I think it's coming to that point right now where a lot of these people are, it's karma, man. It's the souls of the ancestors coming back. Yeah. So I don't know what to say.
Karma will get you. I don't know. I mean, I was listening to another show about it, because my problem with the immigration debate is I want the Democrats to come up with some legal solutions, okay? It's like you all can be standing there talking about kids being ripped from their parents' arms. Like, yes, that's terrible, okay? Everybody thinks that's terrible. That's great TV for you to stand there and talk about it. What do you want to do about it, okay? Right. And again, it's not my country. I don't have any opinions about where, who, or anybody should go or anything, you know, but the government has laws and they need to figure out how to enforce them. Right. And I feel like no, of course not. You know, I mean, I'm against xenophobia and racism. I'm against kids being ripped away from their parents and all of that. Give me some other options.
Now, I'm going to ask you this question. Yeah. I went to my friend's house the other day, right? His dad was talking about this, and I want you to tell me what you think. Yeah. He thinks that they should get rid of the Constitution and make something new. And I thought about it. I'm like, that might work. I mean, but you can't just, it's kind of like you just can't eliminate something that you've been going by for years and decades and centuries. You can't just do it. But he was like, he thinks that a lot of the problems we're having now is because of the Constitution. And it's like, since it's a new age, like it's a lot of stuff that's in the Constitution is making things worse than what it could be.
Well, yes or no. And, well, that's fascinating, because that's just a really interesting thing about the Constitution. There are people who will say, who can find ways for the Constitution to work for them, I guess, who can find ways. Some people interpret the Constitution and it comes up more fair and equitable. And, okay, so there's a thing called strict constitutionalists. And those people take it literally. They really think that what these people, you know, some of whom were slave owners and all that, wrote a couple hundred years ago needs to be taken literally. And then there's people who think that you need to adapt. Okay, society changes. Right. And that is what I agree with. And so one of the things that made a big difference in 20th century civil rights was, you know how they start, because, okay, it would always turn into, like, states' rights, federal rights, okay? Like, states' rights would sort of mean states that wanted to be able to be racist. And so there was like, for example, an illegal case in Morgan versus Virginia in 1946 that had to do with segregating interstate bus travel. And so that was a legal challenge. And so that was saying that, it's sort of saying that, like, okay, we aren't that isolated, okay? If a company is in the United States, the economics of one area affects another area, and it's not as isolated. And that was how they worked for racial justice. Like, okay, if this state, the idea was, okay, if this state is denying black people the right to work, it's affecting the entire country. It's affecting other states. Right. So it's not states' rights. Right. That was a legal way, and so that's something where I think you would need to look at, okay, there were 13 colonies back then, and now the world is much different. Much different, much bigger. So yeah, when those particular case laws were going on about interstate commerce and all that, that was the logic. So that's an example of the Constitution being flexible. And I was talking about this with my brother because, okay, one of the big things about the issues between the conservatives and liberals is that conservatives are like, government, no, we don't want these laws, or like interfering with our lives and all that. It's like, okay, if you pass a law, if laws are passed saying transgender children need to be able to use the bathroom of their choice, that's like an infringement on our choice. That's how people feel. That is the conservative disagreement for stuff like that. And I've always felt that abortion, the pro-choice thing, for me, I am pro-choice because I think it's a private decision. I think medical decisions are private. And I was talking about that with my brother. I was going like, well, wow, can't we ever come to an agreement about this? And he said, well, there isn't a right to privacy in the Constitution. And there's a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but not privacy.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
When you think about it, there isn't.
There isn't.
I didn't think
so
about
yeah,
that.
I mean, it would be great to rewrite the I mean, it's not going to happen, but yeah, I'd sure as hell put that in the new Constitution.
Wow. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's interesting to try and figure that out, and well, that's in the news a lot right now because of whether the president can pardon himself. What's so weird, it's like he is now quoting Saturday Night Live, because there's a Saturday Night Live episode where Alec Baldwin, he's doing Trump, and he's going like, I'm not giving up because I didn't do anything wrong. And so this is
right.
I can't, so this was this is our president. I can pardon myself, but I'm not going to because I didn't do anything wrong.
Right. That's what I'm saying though, but man, just for him to even, I don't know, man. He seems like he thinks he's just really untouchable. Like he could just do, technically he can. It seems like he could do anything he wants.
Well, yeah, and so far, I mean, he has been able to do a lot that he wants. And the question with some of the conservatives are like, okay, how far are you guys gonna let this go in order to get your conservative picks on the court? That was their big thing. I mean, conservatives that don't like Trump, that don't like his values.
So how many of them, like, is there a good majority of conservatives that don't like him? Or is it kind of like...
Oh, I have no idea. Well, I don't know. I think a lot of them don't. That's the big question that comes up. Like, well, okay, how do evangelicals reconcile themselves with this crude, philandering guy?
Because it's like on TV, they don't really... sometimes but they do it in a way... They don't really... I haven't really seen any of them just say, dude, you suck as president. They kind of... You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They say stuff, but they beat around the bush with it. He may have said this wrong, but he's and he has a lot to do, so he and they kind of
they keep coming up with it.
That. I mean, dude, it's like that. I hate to say it, it's like that KKK mentality. It's you can have the baddest person in your group, and he's just awful, but he's part of your group, so you're just gonna back him up no matter what.
Yeah.
And that just one thing is that's the one thing that kills me about these kind of groups of people is like they will have the worst president in the world.
Yeah.
And just because they chose him or he's part of their team, they will just back. I mean, he could almost make this world half of this world hungry and turn us into everything, and they will still just come up for reasons why he's a good president. And it's just crazy to me.
Because they want him to appoint conservative justices, and there were definitely people on the conservative side during the election who were down on Trump because of his behavior and attitudes. I mean, conservatives are not all mean, hateful people at all. But they did it. They voted for him for the Supreme Court. They want conservative people on the Supreme Court and on federal benches because those are lifetime appointments.
Right.
So I don't agree with their choice of candidate, but I certainly understand making a choice to get what you want.
Right. But it's just funny to me how bad they were to Obama. I mean, how they were just dogging him out. And he wasn't that bad to where with Trump they just come up with excuses for this guy, and it's just like, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just politics. I mean, people say like, oh, the Republicans were so mean to Obama. Like, well, okay, now Trump hates now the Democrats pile on Trump. I mean, that's just politics. Yeah. And I know there's people that are going to start shrieking at me about that, but that's politics.
Yeah, man.
Okay, because I disagree with the common narrative. What people keep saying, the narrative is Obama had an obstructionist Congress. Okay, to me, that's an incorrect way of looking at it. Congress is people, okay? They were representing people. So those were also the citizens of this country, and Obama should have looked at it that way. Okay, it's not just these big mean Congress people; they are representing their constituents. And while he was in office, more and more of them were getting elected. So it's that these people were voting. Like, okay, these guys were getting elected. People liked them. And so, like, as you keep talking about how bad Congress is, you're talking about more and more of the country.
Right.
And that's screwed us, as far as I'm concerned. That absolutely screwed us. Those guys kept gaining power, and then they got into 2016, the Congress got redder and redder so...
I think it's time for some music.
Oh,
let's do it.
It is? Well, it's
only...
No, not yet.
Oh, yeah, you want to give a little more?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, because we can go on about that for a while. So we were following... okay, well, I can go to the DRC later, but, okay, in France, the Prime Minister of Spain stepped down for corruption, and then the person that was voted in to take his place is named Pedro Sanchez, and he's a socialist. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And he was backed by members of the Basque communities and the Catalan community. The separatists were backing him, and he's going to meet with them. So the Catalan and Basque separatists is something we've been following, and so we will continue to follow it. And people felt that there was a lot of celebration when Prime Minister Rajoy stepped down, because people felt like finally somebody's been caught because of corruption. Right. Yeah. So I know it should be great to see that here. I mean, that's another thing. I mean, more than anything else, he's so corrupt. Yeah. Okay. So anti-immigrant candidate in Slovenia, where our lovely First Lady is from. Mm-hmm. So I guess she's used to all that. And okay, so we're going to get to like the former Yugoslavia, but we can get back to Ethiopia because we've been talking about the president of Ethiopia, Abiy Abe, because what just happened today, which is pretty exciting, is an agreement between Ethiopia and Eritrea. And there's been a lot of there was a war, there's been a lot of violence there, and so the Prime Minister of Ethiopia is making inroads with Eritrea, and he's also, Abe has also restored internet service, and he dropped charges against a bunch of activists and let a bunch of people out of jail.
Wow.
So that's really cool. Even like one of them had been in jail for 6 years. And this writer that I read an interview with, he was released in February, but then there was a state of emergency a month later, and he was detained again because he was meeting with other friends that had just gotten out of jail to celebrate.
Wow.
That sucks.
Yeah, it sounds like,
Yes.
That sounds like when they have something over you that they just don't like you, they're going to keep pushing you.
But he's out now, so that's really cool. And Eritrea is a very, very closed society. There's a lot, that's one problem. A whole lot of refugees in Europe are from Eritrea because there's compulsory military.
Right.
People are just treated really badly and abused. So hopefully that is going to be doing better. So there's some bright spots. Things are looking good in Ethiopia. So okay, we're gonna take a little musical break.
Let's do it.
Thanks everybody. We'll be right.